I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. I'm Mark, a 45-year-old husband, father, and grandfather. I've been married to Susan for 22 years. Those years have been a whirlwind of joys and struggles, but we made it work, or so I thought. We've raised 2 kids, now adults, and we've got 3 grandkids who light up our lives. But lately, things haven't felt quite right. It started with minor things. Susan became distant, her laughter was less frequent, and the sweet little gestures that used to define our relationship gradually vanished. At first, I shrugged it off, telling myself maybe she was just stressed. After all, she had taken on a part-time job at the local library, and I figured that juggling work with home responsibilities was taking its toll on her. But then I noticed the little things, her phone glued to her side, her late nights at the library turning into something less innocent. I caught glimpses of her texting, always hastily hiding her screen whenever I walked into the room. The excuse she gave was always the same. Just work stuff, Mark. You know how it is. But my gut was screaming that something was off. I tried to dismiss it, convincing myself I was being paranoid. But one afternoon, everything changed. It was a Saturday, the sun was shining, and I was supposed to help my son, Jake, fix his car. I had just poured myself a cup of coffee when I heard Susan's laughter ringing through the house, a bright, carefree laugh that hadn't graced our home in months. I followed the sound, only to find her in the kitchen, phone in hand, chatting animatedly. I tried to brush it off again, thinking maybe she was just having a good day. But then I heard the name Brian slip from her lips, followed by a giggle that sent chills down my spine. Brian was a name I recognized. He was a coworker of hers, someone she mentioned occasionally. But this laughter was different. It was tinged with something I hadn't heard in years: flirtation. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. My heart started racing, and my mind was racing even faster. Why the hell was she laughing like that? I decided to confront her, but I wanted proof first. Over the next few days, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. I became a detective in my own home, watching her every move, noting her late nights and secretive phone calls. The paranoia was exhausting, but I felt I had to find out the truth. One evening, I took a chance. I left my phone on the kitchen table, and as I pretended to watch TV, I listened as she walked in. I could hear her voice, muffled but unmistakable, whispering sweet nothings into the phone. I bolted to the kitchen, heart thumping. I caught her off guard, and she quickly hung up. "Who was that?" I demanded, my voice trembling with the mixture of fear and anger. She stammered, trying to come up with an excuse, but I could see the panic in her eyes. "Just a friend from work," she said, trying to brush it off. But I wasn't having it anymore. The pieces were starting to snap together. The next day, I decided to confront her directly. I walked into the living room where she was sitting, not even looking at me. "We need to talk, Susan," I said, my voice steady but laced with emotion. The way I said it must have triggered something in her because her demeanor shifted. She looked up, her eyes widening. "What's this about?" she asked. "I know something going on," I stated flatly, watching her expression shift from surprise to apprehension. And just like that, the dam broke. She claimed it was a misunderstanding, that I was overreacting, but the truth hung thick in the air between us. I could feel it. I was drowning in it. I pushed for answers. Her excuses crumbled before me like a house of cards. "It's just casual," she said. "We're just friends, Mark. You know how I am around people." But as she spoke, I could see the lies in her eyes. I felt rage boiling inside me, not just from the betrayal, but from the sheer disrespect she was showing. This wasn't just about her cheating. It was about how she disrespected not only me, but our entire family. It was surreal, sitting there with her, feeling my heart shatter into a million pieces. I had spent years building a life with her, a family, and now it felt like it was all slipping through my fingers. As the confrontation continued, I felt anger morphing into sadness, and I realized I needed to gather my thoughts. I left quietly, deciding not to drag the kids and grandkids into our drama. They would never have to witness this. I needed time to process what was happening, and I felt utterly lost. What would I do next? I had no idea, but I knew I had to come up with a plan. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about preserving what little dignity I had left. I could not let this stand. I had to think of something, a way to make her understand the depths of her betrayal, and that's where the idea of revenge began to flicker in my mind. But one thing was clear: I needed to be smart about it. I needed to show her the consequences of her actions. To be continued. I spent the night at Jake's place, pretending everything was fine, but I was an emotional wreck. The laughter of my grandkids echoed in my mind, a bittersweet reminder of the family I'd built with Susan, and now it felt like it was all crumbling around me. I lay on Jake's couch staring at the ceiling, weighing my options. The idea of revenge wasn't just about getting back at her, it was about making her see the reality of what she had done. I thought about all those moments we shared, our wedding, the births of our children, the family vacations. They all felt tainted now, as if I had been living a lie. And this wasn't just about me. It was about our family, our reputation. I couldn't let her betrayal go unchecked. The next morning, I knew I had to delve deeper. I needed proof. I found myself driving back home, my mind racing with thoughts of what I might discover. I decided to install a hidden camera in the living room, somewhere inconspicuous where Susan wouldn't notice. I didn't know if she'd have the audacity to bring Brian over, but I wanted to be prepared. I spent the next few days in a daze, barely eating or sleeping. I went through the motions of life, but my heart wasn't in it. I returned to work, but my mind drifted elsewhere. Meanwhile, the camera recorded the mundane slices of our life. Until one night, I caught something that made my blood run cold. It was a Friday evening when the video showed her coming home late, tossing her keys onto the counter and immediately picking up her phone. The darkness of the house loomed around her as she laughed softly, clearly engaged in a conversation that felt too intimate for a mere friendship. My heart raced as I heard her say, "I can't wait to see you again, Brian. You make me feel alive." I felt sick. I gripped my phone tightly as I captured that moment, knowing I had the evidence I needed. I couldn't believe it. My stomach churned at the thought of how casually she was betraying me, how she was tossing our life aside for this fling. Over the weekend, I reviewed the footage multiple times, each viewing further fueling my anger. I felt betrayed not just as a husband, but as a man who had devoted his life to a woman who was clearly willing to throw it all away for a cheap thrill. By Saturday night, I had formulated my plan. I would confront her again, but this time, I would be armed with the undeniable truth. The following Monday, I decided to set the stage. I arranged for Jake to take the kids out for ice cream, creating a perfect scenario for the showdown. I felt a strange mix of nerves and determination as the hour approached. I wanted her to understand that I wasn't just some fool. When she walked in that evening, I was waiting for her. The dim light made the atmosphere tense, but I held my ground. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady. She looked at me, a flicker of concern crossing her face. "About what?" I pulled out my phone and the realization hit her. "I've seen the videos, Susan, your late-night conversations, the laughing, I know everything." Her face paled and she stammered, "Mark, it's not what you think." But I wasn't giving her the chance to twist this into something I wouldn't recognize. "Not what I think. You're having an affair. You've been lying to me, to our family." I felt the weight of every word, every ounce of betrayal behind them. She shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting away, looking for some escape. "I didn't mean for it to happen, Mark. Brian was just different. You've been so distant, and I felt what? Justified in cheating." I interrupted, my voice rising. "You disrespected our marriage, our family, and in front of our grandkids, no less." The crack in her facade was palpable. "I never wanted to hurt you. I thought we could work through this." "Work through what? You're the one who made this decision. You took vows, Susan. Did those mean anything to you?" Tears started streaming down her cheeks, but I felt no sympathy. I was beyond that stage. I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions, to understand the gravity of what she had done. "Mark, please," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't know how it got this far." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to remain calm despite the turmoil within me. "You made your choice, Susan. You wanted to feel alive with Brian, and now you have to deal with what comes next. I don't know if I can forgive you, and frankly, I don't know if I even want to try." The silence hung heavy between us. I could see the realization settling into her expression. This was no longer just a conversation, it was the reckoning. What would happen next? I had no idea, but I knew one thing. I wouldn't let her get away with this. It was time to take control of my life. To be continued. In the aftermath of our confrontation, the air in the house felt thick with unresolved tension. I could see the flicker of regret in Susan's eyes, but it was accompanied by a defensiveness that only fueled my anger. I had always prided myself on being a patient man, but the betrayal was like a wildfire, consuming every ounce of that patience. "I need time to think," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The words felt heavy, laden with uncertainty. I didn't want to make any rash decisions just yet, but I also knew I couldn't continue living under the same roof as her while feeling this way. Susan opened her mouth to say something, but I cut her off. "No, don't even try to justify any of this. You've made your choice, and now I have to make mine." With that, I turned and walked out of the room, leaving her standing there, tears streaming down her face. I needed to clear my head. I grabbed my jacket and stepped outside into the cool evening air, letting the quiet settle around me like a blanket. I drove aimlessly for a while, my thoughts racing. The betrayal was like a knife in my gut, and the pain was as fresh as it had been when I first discovered her infidelity. I couldn't wrap my mind around how I had been so blind, how I had missed the signs. I thought about all the moments we'd shared, all the sacrifices I had made for our family, and it felt like a cruel joke. I returned home late that night, my mind still racing. I was unsure of what to expect. Would she try to talk to me again? Would she attempt to soothe the gaping wound she had inflicted? When I walked in, I found her sitting on the couch, her eyes puffy and red from crying. The sight of her made my heart ache, but that ache was quickly overshadowed by outrage. "Mark, can we please talk?" she said, her voice shaky. I didn't answer immediately. I wanted to see if she could confront the reality of her actions without my prompting. After a few moments of silence, I finally nodded, crossing my arms defensively. "I know I messed up. I never meant to hurt you. I was feeling neglected and Brian he was there. But it was a mistake and I want to make it right," she pleaded, her words tumbling out in a desperate rush. "Make it right?" I echoed, incredulous. "You can't just erase what you did, Susan. You've shattered everything we built together. I can't just forget that you chose him over our family." I wasn't thinking straight. "I love you, Mark. I do." Love, the word felt hollow now. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. You wouldn't have disrespected our marriage like this." I watched as her expression shifted from desperation to a kind of resignation. "What do you want me to say?" "I'm sorry. I'll do anything to fix it." I sighed, feeling exhausted. "No, Susan, it's not enough to just say you're sorry. Trust is gone, and you need to understand the consequences of your actions. You've crossed a line, and I don't think I can come back from this." She looked defeated, and it struck me hard. It was like watching a part of her die, and I realized that she too was a casualty in this mess. But that didn't change my decision. I needed to protect myself and my heart. "I think it's best if we take some time apart," I said finally. "I need to figure out what I want, and I can't do that with you here." The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. Susan's face fell, and for a moment I felt a flicker of guilt. But then I remembered that she had made her choice. I couldn't allow my empathy to override my self-respect. "Mark, please, I'll do better, I promise." Her voice cracked with desperation. I shook my head, feeling the weight of my own emotions. "I don't think you understand. This isn't about promises anymore. It's about actions, and you've shown me your true colors." I walked away, leaving her behind as I headed to the spare bedroom. I could hear her sobs echoing through the house, and it made my heart ache even more. But I couldn't dwell on that. I needed to focus on myself and my next steps. Over the next few days, I isolated myself. I didn't reach out to friends or family. I didn't want to share this pain with anyone just yet. I felt embarrassed and exposed. I spent my evenings watching mindless television, trying to drown out the chaos in my head. I couldn't ignore the reality of what had happened. Susan had chosen to cheat, and now I faced the difficult decision of whether to rebuild or break free. I began to assess my options, making lists in my head of what I wanted for my future. In the quiet of those nights, I started to realize that perhaps this was an opportunity to rediscover who I was without Susan. I made plans to reconnect with friends I had lost touch with over the years, activities I had set aside to focus on family life. I even contemplated taking a short trip somewhere, just to clear my head and gather my thoughts. But one thing was clear: I wouldn't let this define me. I would rise from the ashes of this betrayal, and I would emerge stronger, more self-aware than before. To be continued. As the days turned into weeks, the initial shock of Susan's betrayal began to settle into a more manageable pain. I was no longer a raw nerve, but rather a man who had been through a storm and come out on the other side, albeit still battered. Taking time apart had granted me clarity. I was starting to understand what I truly wanted from this chaotic situation. I finally picked up the phone and called Jake. It felt good just to hear his voice. We hadn't talked much since everything went down, and I needed the support even if it was just a casual chat. "Hey Dad, how have you been?" he said, his tone bright and cheerful. "Not too bad, just getting through it," I replied, trying to keep my voice light. "I know you're going through a rough patch," he said gently. "If you need anything, just let me know." "I appreciate that, son. I'm actually thinking about getting away for a bit. I need some time to clear my head." "Sounds like a great idea. Want to hit the cabin this weekend? I can help you pack and get everything set up." His offer felt like a lifeline. "Yeah, that would be perfect. Thanks, Jake." We spent the next few days planning the trip, and with each passing moment I felt lighter. The thought of being in nature, away from all the reminders of Susan and our life together, filled me with a sense of hope. That Friday, I packed my bags with the essentials: clothes, fishing gear, and a few books I'd been meaning to read. As I drove toward the cabin, the stress of the past few weeks began to fade into the rearview mirror. The scenery changed from city streets to rolling hills, the stressors of daily life falling away like leaves from autumn trees. When I arrived, the air was crisp and inviting. I stepped onto the porch, taking a deep breath, letting the fresh scent of pine fill my lungs. The cabin was simple, but it had always been a sanctuary for me, a place where I could find peace. I set my things down and went outside to soak in the beauty that surrounded me. The next few days were blissful. I took long walks, went fishing, and even rekindled my love for reading. It was like rediscovering a part of myself I hadn't realized was missing. I found solace in the quiet moments, where the only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the calls of birds. I spent hours reflecting on my life, my marriage, and the choices I had made. It wasn't until the third evening that I found myself sitting on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, that the weight of my situation began to settle back in. I thought about Susan, the family we had built, and the betrayal that had shattered everything. I realized I was angry not just at her, but at myself for allowing her actions to define my self-worth. I had always believed in the sanctity of marriage, in commitment and loyalty, and her betrayal felt like a personal affront to everything I had stood for. But as I sat there, something shifted. I began to feel a sense of empowerment. I had the ability to choose my path moving forward. The betrayal had hurt, but it wouldn't break me. I wasn't going to allow Susan's choices to dictate my happiness or my future. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt a renewed sense of clarity. I would confront Susan again, but this time I wouldn't be the broken man begging for answers. I would be someone who recognized his value, someone who understood that I deserved honesty and respect. When I returned home, I was resolved. I needed to talk to Susan, to address the situation head-on. I didn't know what the future held for us, but I was ready to face it. The day after I got back, I went into the house, my heart pounding with anticipation. Susan was in the kitchen, her back turned to me as she prepared dinner. The scent of something cooking filled the air, a reminder of our shared life, and it made my heart ache slightly. "Hey, Mark," she said, glancing over her shoulder. "You're back." "Yeah," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. "We need to talk." She turned around, concern etched on her face. "About what?" "About us," I said, meeting her gaze directly. "I need to know if you're willing to be honest with me moving forward. I want to understand if you truly want to repair what's been broken." She took a deep breath, her eyes searching mine. "I know I messed up, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. I didn't realize how much you meant to me until I almost lost you." "Words are just words, Susan," I countered. "I need actions. I need to see that you're committed to fixing this rather than just saying it." I can show you, I promise. I'll go to therapy, work on myself. I'll do whatever it takes. I watched her closely, the sincerity of her eyes battling with the skepticism in my mind. I need you to understand that trust has to be rebuilt, and that's going to take time. I know, she said softly. I'll prove it to you, just give me a chance. I took a moment to process everything. I wanted to believe her, and a part of me longed for the life we had built, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. All right, I said finally. We can try, but understand that if this happens again, there won't be a second chance. She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. In that moment, I realized that while the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, it was also filled with potential for growth. It wouldn't be easy, and I didn't know where it would lead, but I was willing to explore the possibility of healing. And as I looked into Susan's eyes, I saw the flicker of hope. Hope for our family, for our relationship, maybe even for us. To be continued. The days that followed our conversation were a strange mix of hope and uncertainty. I had agreed to give Susan a chance, but I couldn't shake the feeling of trepidation. The road to rebuilding trust is a long and winding one, and I was acutely aware of that. I felt a cautious optimism, but I had learned to tread lightly. Susan immediately threw herself into making amends. She suggested couples therapy, and I agreed. I figured it was a step in the right direction, a way for us to have a neutral ground where we could both express our feelings without the weight of our history hanging over us. In our first session, we sat across from each other, the therapist, a middle-aged woman named Dr. Harris, sat between us, armed with notepads and a kind smile. "I'm glad you're both here," she said, her tone soothing. "It takes courage to face these issues head-on. Let's start by discussing why you decided to come here today." Susan spoke first, her voice somewhat shaky. "I've realized how much I've hurt Mark, and I want to fix our relationship. I know I messed up, and I want to take responsibility." I nodded, my hands clasped tightly together. "I appreciate that, but it's going to take more than just words. I need to see a commitment from you, not just in therapy but in everyday life." Dr. Harris nodded encouragingly. "That's an important point, Mark. Trust is built on consistent actions over time. Susan, what steps can you take to demonstrate your commitment to rebuilding this relationship?" Susan took a deep breath, her eyes glistening with tears. "I'm willing to be more open. I'll share my feelings and let Mark know when I'm struggling. I'll also cut ties with Brian for good. I realize it's necessary." Hearing her say that felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. It was the first step toward healing, and I appreciated her willingness to confront the past. The session went on, with us both sharing our feelings, our fears, and our hopes. I felt exhausted afterward, but there was a flicker of hope igniting within me. Over the next few weeks, we continued attending therapy sessions. They were tough. Some days felt like we were making progress, and other days were filled with conflict and old wounds reopening. I struggled with my feelings of betrayal while trying to be the supportive husband I once was. It felt like I was walking a tightrope, balancing my emotions while trying to keep our family intact. I also started to reconnect with friends, allowing myself to be vulnerable with them about what I was going through. It was a reminder that I wasn't alone in this journey. One evening, I met up with a close friend, Dave, at a bar. "Mark, I can't believe what you've been through," he said, raising his glass. "You're a good man, and you deserve better than this." "Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it. It's just hard to process everything. One day it feels like we might find our way back to each other, and the next I'm filled with doubt." "Take your time, man. Focus on you too. You deserve happiness, whether that's with her or moving on." His words resonated with me. I needed to focus on my own healing as well. It wasn't just about repairing our relationship. It was about nurturing my well-being as well. Meanwhile, Susan was making strides. She started attending counseling on her own, something I hadn't initially expected. I could see her working on herself, and it filled me with cautious optimism. She had become more open and communicative, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like we were both on the same page. But the moment I felt a glimmer of hope, the past would sneak back in. One evening, I was cleaning out the garage when I stumbled upon an old box filled with mementos from our early years together. Photos, letters, and little trinkets of our love. I sat down on the floor, flooded with nostalgia, but when I found a letter Susan wrote me before we got married, the words felt different now. Mark, I promise to love you forever, through thick and thin, in good times and bad. You are my everything. I crumpled the letter in my hand, feeling the weight of betrayal resurface. The anger bubbled up again, and I realized how fragile this newfound hope was. I needed to confront her about the depth of my feelings and the lingering pain. That evening, I called Susan into the living room. "We need to talk about something," I said, my voice steady but serious. She sat down in front of me, her expression curious yet cautious. "What is it?" "I found some old letters today. They reminded me of how beautiful our relationship once was, but it also made me realize how much pain I'm still carrying. I need you to understand that while I want to work through this, I'm still incredibly hurt." "I get it, Mark. I really do," she said, her eyes widening with understanding. "I'm sorry for everything. I'm willing to face the consequences of my actions, whatever it takes." I nodded, appreciating her sincerity but knowing that words would only take us so far. "I'm trying to heal, but I need you to be patient with me. This isn't something I can just forget. I need to see that you are committed to changing and being the partner I thought you were." "I will be, I promise. I've been reflecting on how much I took for granted," she replied. "I'll earn your trust back, Mark, I swear." We both knew the journey wasn't going to be easy. It was going to take time, patience, and consistent effort from both of us. But as we sat there, surrounded by memories of our past, I felt a small spark of hope ignite once again. We were both willing to fight for this, to confront the pain and work through it together. As difficult as it was, I felt like this was a turning point. I had taken the first steps toward healing, and maybe now we could both find our way back to each other, not just as husband and wife, but as partners again. To be continued. As time passed, the healing process took shape in ways I hadn't anticipated. The therapy sessions became a staple in our lives, a safe haven where we could explore our feelings openly and honestly. Each week brought new challenges, but I began to notice subtle shifts in our dynamic. Susan was working hard to show me that she was committed to change, and I was starting to feel the walls around my heart begin to soften. One evening, after a particularly emotional session, we sat in the car outside the therapist's office. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a gentle glow over us. "I'm really proud of you, Susan," I said, my voice steady. "You've made significant progress. I see how hard you're trying." She smiled, a genuine warmth in her eyes. "Thank you, Mark. It means so much to hear that from you. I know I have a long way to go, but I want to be the partner you deserve." "I want that too," I replied, feeling a mix of hope and caution. I still had reservations, but at that moment I also felt a sense of relief. We were on a journey together, and whatever lay ahead, we were committed to facing it as a team. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself reflecting on the lessons I learned throughout this ordeal. It was hard to believe that a betrayal could lead to such growth, both individually and as a couple. I was learning the importance of communication, of honesty, and of vulnerability. I began to understand that love isn't just about the good times, it's also about facing the hard times together. One Saturday, we decided to take a day trip to the beach. The sun was shining, and the sound of the waves crashing against the shore felt invigorating. We walked hand in hand, reminiscing about the early days of our relationship. The atmosphere was light, filled with laughter and warmth. As we sat on the sand, I looked at her, taking in the woman I had once thought I had lost forever. "You know, I never thought we'd get to this place again," I said, my heart full. Susan turned to me, her expression earnest. "Neither did I, but I'm grateful every day for the chance to prove that I can be better. You've shown me the depths of your heart, and I want to show you the same." In that moment, as the waves lapped at the shore and the sun dipped lower in the sky, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The pain of her betrayal didn't vanish completely, but it was no longer the defining factor in our relationship. We had both learned what it meant to fight for each other, to communicate openly, and to prioritize our commitment. But the journey didn't mean we were without our struggles. There were still moments of doubt, times when old wounds threatened to resurface. I found myself occasionally grappling with jealousy, wondering if the memories of Brian lingered too closely in her mind. However, we used those moments as opportunities to communicate, and Susan always reassured me of her love and commitment. One evening, as we sat on the couch together, she placed her hand on mine. "Mark, I want to ask you something," she began, her voice a mixture of seriousness and warmth. "How do you feel about our progress? Do you think we can truly move forward together?" I took a deep breath, reflecting on everything we had been through. "I do believe we can move forward," I said carefully, "but I think we need to keep working at it. Trust is built over time, and I need to see that consistency from you." "I understand that," she replied. "I'm committed to showing you that I want to be the partner you deserve. I'll do whatever it takes." The sincerity in her voice felt like a balm to my heart, and for the first time in a long time I believed her. Eventually, we began to plan for the future, not just rebuilding our past but creating something new together. We talked about taking trips, exploring new hobbies, and even considering the possibility of renewing our vows. The idea filled me with excitement, a symbol of our commitment to one another. The healing journey was ongoing, but we faced it with a united front. Each day, we chose to love one another, to communicate openly, and to remind ourselves of the profound connection that still bound us. Looking back on everything, I realized that while betrayal had rocked the foundation of our marriage, it also illuminated the strengths we had overlooked. It forced us to confront our vulnerabilities, and in doing so, we unearthed a deeper understanding of love and commitment. As I reflect on this tumultuous chapter, I feel grateful. Grateful for the lessons learned, for the love that survived the storm, and for the growth that followed. Love is not just about sunshine and rainbows, it's about weathering the storms together and emerging stronger on the other side. And so, we continue our journey, side by side, ready to face whatever challenges the future holds. Together.